Do you think you need to see all the instances of EQ visually to understand whether that's a good record or not, or whether it sounds good or not? I'm going to cover a couple things. FabFilter Pro Q4, information that you're getting from YouTube content creators and what you could think about it. I'm going to relate this back to a story or a couple of stories from, let's just say, the early days in my career where I would be in New York City at the Hit Factory. You'd show up in the morning. I'll give you the scenario. You'd show up in the morning for a session, and there would be technicians in the room setting up the room, aligning tape machines, cleaning gear, checking faders, checking the computer on the console for the automation, troubleshooting. They would have reports from the session from the night before saying, you know, channel 23, the line trim is scratchy or making some noise. Little things like that. They'd be in there fixing or addressing, putting in the machines that were needed for that session. But these guys were the internet police before there was the internet, as far as what information was being passed around. And if you wanted to know something, you could go to one of these guys and say, particularly the chief tech, you could throw things at him or ask questions and get an answer pretty quickly, because this guy would talk to anybody that came through the room in the morning, night, for years, whether it was Bob Clearmountain or Tony Maserati or myself or Andy Smith, all these name-dropping things I could give you. But these type of guys would be the ones that would pass around good information, and they were also very keen on who was just full of BS. They had good bullshit detectors. The truth of the matter is, like, a lot of work that people got was from word of mouth from those guys and from your peers. You got work, and your credibility was established by word of mouth. So if you had a conversation with somebody and you were talking some bullshit, the word would get around that you were clueless. The word would get around quickly that someone was absolutely an idiot, didn't know what the hell they were talking about, or was like kind of overreaching on what they were talking about. And you had to be somewhat wary of this particular person. You'd also find out who was sneaky, who was trying to steal gigs from somebody, who was contemplating leaving a gig, all these kinds of things. So what I'm getting at is I watched this video by a somewhat reputable channel. They sell gear. They sell plugins. Plugin Boutique, or one of those, Plugin Alliance or Plugin Boutique, I don't remember. Doesn't matter. The guy was doing a review of FabFilter. You know, I was curious. So I'd watch a little bit of it. Let me see what this, I kind of had trusted this channel here and there for different things. I've bought some product through them. The guy's going over the EQ, and not once did he actually talk about what the audio was doing. All he was talking about was what the graphical interface was doing, what it looked like, everything was. And then this looks like this, and this looks like that. And then, like, you can see this and you can see that. Those were the keywords. You could see this, you could see that, and then you could see this, and then you could see that. And it wasn't like, and then you can hear this, and you can hear that, and this is what this would do sonically, and this is what this would do to the audio, and this is how, if you ran into a situation where the kick and the bass were clashing or rubbing, what you could do. Now, I don't understand why something as simple as the kick and bass relationship needs and this is the favorite word they like to use, surgical. Whenever I hear someone say it's surgical, I mean, I didn't know I needed to do surgery. You know, what's even funnier is, like, these aren't people that are making Steely Dan records or harmonically dense records with incredible instrumentation and an orchestra and a grand piano and a full drum kit and a choir and a lead vocal and a bass guitar and two guitars and percussion. These are like literally laptop producers that need surgical EQ, that the shills that are pushing this product never talk about what the sound is like. What are you hearing? What and why? You know, can one of them say at least, hey, if all your tracks are a disaster, if all your tracks are terrible, you're going to need surgical EQ that you could see every instance of. I mean, I understand frequencies and I understand mixing and I understand EQ. I don't need to see EQ. I need to hear EQ. I need to listen when I turn a knob, if it's, or pull a fader or drag a node, as this guy, you know, he referred to them as. If I drag a node somewhere, I don't need to see what it's doing. I need to hear what it's doing. Yesterday, I was working with someone that I mentor. I'm doing all I can to save him from going over the cliff of never using his ears. He's just constantly using his mind and his eyes and not using his ears. Going back to my stories about the early days at Say the Hit, the word got around if you had good ears. The word did not get around that you knew, you know, work surgically with an EQ. It was whether you had good ears or not. And what gets you good ears? Listening a lot, working a lot as far as putting up faders, putting up tracks, hearing what the relationships are, listening to the audio, understanding what frequencies do with each other with regards, you know, what frequencies are going to be a problem on a bass drum, or what frequencies might be an issue on a piano. Not visually looking at it and going like, well, if this is ducking here and this is being sidechained there, that must mean that all of my drums will be not masking. Do you think that there's no masking on Dark Side of the Moon or the White Album or the Chronic? Do you think there's no masking on those records? The industry standards, to use that term, going to that whole Pro Tools thing. The Chronic, I don't know, Illmatic. Do you think there's no masking on those things? Do you think that they needed Fab Filter would have saved the day on what those records sound like? Kanye's first couple of records. Do you think there's no masking? Do you think there's no frequency clashing? Do you think you need to see all the instances of EQ visually to understand whether that's a good record or not, or whether it sounds good or not? I beg to differ.